7 o'clock.
I think it's like one person. I'll look it up.
This microphone's getting backwards. So,
Well, it is 7 o'clock, and
one more.
I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order and welcome our 2 visitors. No, it's better than not having anybody.
I enjoy it.
A lot's better. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. Let's move on to our second agenda item, which is the oath for office, and I'm going to turn the time over to the city to administer that oath.
Perfect, thank you, Chad. We'll invite you and our new member. We'd like to introduce Ruben Morales as our new member of the Planning Commission. If you'd like to come down, you will be administered the oath of office by Deputy Recorder Benson.
It's really hard. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
Chad Holbrook.
Ruben.
Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Utah,
the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Very
Did I
good.
have that right?
You did.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'll have you sign here. There's 2 copies.
Sign both copies.
Yes, please.
So nice, I feel official now.
That's good.
You are official now.
Is this your 3rd term, Chad?
That's 11 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very good.
Thank you so much. I just passed 11 years. Well, that's good. And it's been a pleasure to serve in the city, and what I've seen in the last 11 years. It's been an interesting experiment in civil participation. Okay, very good. Well, let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is consent approval. Our Planning Commission meeting minutes for January 14th of 2026. Did you all get a chance to review?
I did, yeah.
Yes.
Any comments or concerns? Any typos? Maybe we need to have Greg Montgomery read our thing. I love Greg. Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the Planning Commission meetings from January 14th, 2026.
I second that.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Okay. Very good. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 4 then. And to grant a recommended conditional use permit number 150 for a home occupation located at approximately 1967 North, 275 West. Do we, would you like to share information on this?
Sure, and we can invite the applicant up to the podium if you'd like.
I would love to, yeah.
Thank you.
Come forward. Thought we'd get some background first, and then we'd
Sure.
turn it over to you to give us some more information. Do you have any background from the city that we need to go over?
No, just this is a conditional use permit for a home occupation. Every time we get one of these requests, they come here and we ask specific questions. The goal of these conditional use permits for home occupations is to make sure that the home occupation doesn't change the residential nature of the neighborhood in which it's going to operate. And so we go through various questions and different analysis of the code to make sure that the proposed occupation meets those requirements. Angie, well, if you want, you can have Angie describe what her plans are for home occupation.
I would love to have you do that. Okay, good, thank you.
Oh, Erin, thank you, not Angie, Erin.
Like, nice to meet you, Angie.
Haven't met you yet.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's go with the flow.
I like it.
So nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm Erin.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi. So you want me to just tell you a little bit about it?
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
So I have my cosmetology license and I got it out of Salt Lake. And I wanted to get back into my licensing because I currently work with the IRS. It's a great time. We love it. But I will be doing some lash treatments and facials and body care and body waxing, which will fall underneath my licensing board with Double. But for the most part, it'll be a one-on-one clientele basis. I won't have anybody else other than that one-on-one. And it will take up one singular room in my house. And there will be access to a bathroom, which is skateboard certified or skateboard regulated. And it also will only take up one parking unit within the townhome complex, which is already assigned to my address. That is about it. Any specific questions?
We'll go through, but yeah.
What are your hours of operation?
Not quite sure yet, but it will probably be anywhere from like 10 to 5, nowhere to probably later than 6 in the afternoon.
So this will become your primary job then, or are you going to continue to work it?
I will probably still continue to work part-time at the most, or at the least in full-time at the most with the Internal Revenue Service. This will be more of an extra form of income when I have the availability for it.
Okay. So on the days when you're not working at the IRS, this is when you'll be doing this?
Hopefully.
Right.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So you have an idea of 3 days a week? 4
Yeah,
days a week?
That would
maybe?
be a great goal. Probably around 3 to 4 days a week at most. Definitely, that would be the end goal, but to start probably only mid-afternoon on Friday and Saturdays, just while the clientele is building up.
Okay, great. And then how late do you plan to do that?
Since it is still within the home, my home still operates like normal, so I would like to be completed around the hour 5 to 6. So my normal home operation can continue as normal with like dinner and family-ish things. So hopefully 6.
Right on, sounds good. Yes, yeah. And will you be selling any products or anything?
I did read over that in the printout a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have my wholesale license as well with the state. And I do have product I can sell that is based out of professional distributors like skincare items and things like that. Am I allowed to offer those?
I'm not sure how that would apply where it's just one-on-one.
Yeah, we don't typically prohibit the selling of product to a client that you're giving services to. We would prohibit you opening up it as like a retail distribution center.
That makes sense.
But if you're selling to a client that you're providing services to, we usually don't have an issue with that.
Okay, then yes, it'll be basic skincare items. So facial treatments, moisturizers, conditioners, things like that.
Do you have any questions? Sounds like it's good.
You answered my question about parking. That was going to be my one question.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to complexes. So I did mention prior that my HOA gave me approval because it is with a complex kind of a system, right? And they did give me approval within the condition of no signage for advertising. I did reach back out to them and ask for reconsideration on that fact, and they gave me permission within having signage within my window. I don't necessarily want to have like advertisement kind of signage. That definitely isn't the type of advertisement I want to get either. I do have though a cute little, I brought it if you wanted to see it, a cute little like garden flag that has my logo on it. So it kind of just hangs from like a little sign. So people that walk to my home and know at least where to locate it, so they don't go knocking on other people's houses on accident at that complex.
Right.
Smart.
So this is what I do have. I don't know if that's prohibited or not with the signage or.
No, as part of the analysis, I looked at, let's see. So we talked a little bit about, most of the things don't apply. So if you did want to extend your hours, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. are part of the code, so it should be fine between those hours.
Definitely not go earlier than 7.
So signage, so no exterior lighting. So signage would comply with whatever your HOA requires. And then in the code, it says like a nameplate not to exceed 2 square feet in area indicating the name of the occupant and or permitted home occupation. So I would assume what you have is acceptable.
And I can of course forward the emails to you guys as well about that approval change with my HOA as well. It is just in an email, it's not in like any official letter, if that's okay.
I think that should be fine.
They've been a pain in trying to get them to write a letter.
I don't want to do that.
Like HOAs always are.
Well, good. Yeah, it sounds like a good thing.
Do you want me to go through the rest of the analysis really quick?
Sure.
Just other thoughts? So it sounds like you've read through most of this, and so the code does talk about just what's expected of a home occupation, and I didn't see any reason that it would interfere with the neighbors.
Hopefully not.
And I did an estimate of your residence, and it's supposed to be about 300 square feet for the studio. You said 1 room, so it's probably
Yes.
close to that, and that should be fine.
Yeah, pretty close on the nose.
Let's see, the other one. Right now you're not proposing any sort of permanent makeup services, but if you were, you need to be in compliance with Weber Morgan Health, just something to think about. And then as part of these requirements, it says in here your business, you'd need to have state codes and licensing requirements to have your home occupation business license from Harrisville City as well.
Would you like me to provide you that as well?
Not for the conditional use permit, but just
For your business license, there's a spot on the application that
Okay.
you can put your state license in there.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
And so the only recommendations I had were just to comply with the regulations outlined, and then one client at a time. And I think because of the area you're in, I think it would be best to always operate that way. I would restrict it to 1 client at a time because of the size and the
Body
location.
services is a little bit more of an intimate service.
So it probably
Weird to
wouldn't
have more than
conflict.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to have the clients use that designated parking space that you showed on the site plan. And you answered that question about the area of the home. So those are the only recommendations that I have
Good.
for
That's
the conditional use permit.
nice. That's good. That's what I was thinking. Okay. So if none of you have any questions?
Well, with that, not being familiar with that, does it require any kind of inspection or anything for somebody to go look or layout and say, yeah, you're.
Yes, that's a great question. It does require a fire marshal for the business license, and we're working on the city side of that through our police department to have an inspection done on businesses. But yeah, the fire department will have to sign off for sure on the business license.
Mhm.
And start asking that. That was a great question for me to know the answer to as well.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Great question. A motion to approve?
Yeah, do you want to do it?
I don't know if I'm wording.
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
Hit me.
I would just motion to approve and then just use the information contained right
Just right here and not
Yeah,
yellow.
just read it straight, motion to grant.
Okay, so I recommend a motion to approve to grant the recommended conditional use permit number 150 for a home occupation located at approximately 1967 North, 275 West.
Yeah, keep going.
Oh, right here.
Subject to staff. If there's a
Oh, I went to the
staff
wrong thing.
report.
Thank you. Subject to staff report dated February 5th, 2026, Harrisville City Municipal Code and any other staff or agency requirements.
Maybe we can have our new councilman second.
Yes, I second that.
Okay, fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, sounds like it. Thank you. Yes.
How exciting for you. I know, that was kind of really cool and official and nerve-wracking.
It sounds like we'll have 14 days if anybody wants to come and
Yeah.
indicate that they don't agree with the fact that you're getting it.
Cool. Well,
So,
good to know. And
other than
then
that-
after the 14 days, that's when I come back with you guys for the business licensing things and the fire marshal stuff, right? Yeah. Beautiful. See, this is easy. You guys have been great.
Well, you've done great.
No,
You've been great. Thank you so much.
Yes. Do you need anything else from me?
Nope, you guys are free to go, or if you want to
Oh, to
talk
go?
about ordinances, stay.
I don't know. I feel like it's rude just to leave already.
So you guys are
You guys are good.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
great
good
night.
I appreciate it.
You bet.
Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to agenda item. And we don't have anybody online, do we? Okay. I was going to say I didn't see anybody. Okay, because I'd like to welcome them to it. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 5, general plan amendments, and turn the floor over to Sarah for the information to instruct us.
All right, so I want to have a discussion today about accessory dwelling units, and I have printed out kind of just a guide for questions, some recommendations. So the recommendations I have come from the Land Use Institute. They did a pretty thorough presentation on what we learned so far from ADUs and what they think. And so I went with that and some of my experience, but I also, we need to figure out, what works for Harrisville. So we don't have to use my recommendations. So I wanted to start though with definitions, so we know exactly what an accessory dwelling unit is and the different types. So an accessory dwelling unit, it's secondary to the primary dwelling, and it has to include a kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping area. That's what separates it from like a storage shed. It has to be livable. There are internal accessory dwelling units, and these are currently allowed in the code and mandated by the state that they're allowed in our code. And that means that the entirety of the accessory dwelling unit exists within the current footprint of the home. You're not making any sort of an addition necessarily. They're like inside the home. And then an attached ADU is where you would increase the footprint in some way to accommodate an ADU. And a detached ADU is a freestanding structure. So just so you know what types of ones we're talking about. We may want to have different restrictions based on the different types of ADUs. So just wanted to start with that.
Excellent.
So, and we can go over all these and come back to them and whatever, but I just want everyone's feedback. So as I'm writing this proposed ordinance, it reflects what you guys feel. So the first discussion is the number of ADUs permitted on a lot. And I know, I'd say most of the cities allow just one. And that would be fine. The Land Use Institute suggested permitting more, but if we did, some considerations for if we wanted to allow more than one ADU would be lot size for sure. And we'll get into, and maybe this is one to think about as we get into the restrictions on how much parking is required and setbacks and lot coverage and things like that. That will restrict how many are on a lot. I wouldn't recommend 2 ADUs on anything smaller than half acre. An acre at the very biggest. Yeah.
Quick question so this is within the family, right? And this isn't like...
No, they can be rented to anyone. However, an ADU has to be the primary dwelling or the other dwelling. One of the dwellings has to be owner occupied. So if they're renting out one of the buildings, they have to live in the other building. So that's the I guess advantage of ADUs in a community is that they are. The idea is that they're going to be well maintained and well managed and well looked after because the owner has to be on the premises essentially. So that's the hope, is to create an income property and a rental property to help affordability for homes. That's the goal. So
I'm so
yeah.
glad we're doing this. Does this make sense to everybody?
So far, so
Why
good.
this is so needed?
Yeah.
And
I'm so glad we're doing this in here.
I mean, we can talk about number of ADUs, but it might be better to talk through the rest of it, and then we can come back and see if it's even a good idea to allow more than one. So, okay, let's talk about location and setbacks. So, currently in the code, we allow accessory structures. That's a name from in the code, right? And so I thought it would be. I looked at the detached ADUs and felt that if they were meeting the accessory dwelling or the accessory structures code, then they wouldn't be infringing any more on the surrounding properties than the homeowner already has the right to build, if that makes sense. Oh, thank you, that would be awesome. So right now, you can build an accessory structure within the certain footprint around your home. It can be closer to the property line. 1 foot for a regular roof, and I think it has to be 3 feet if it's a steel roof, just because it sheds the water more. It has to be 6 feet away from the primary dwelling. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, here's the code.
What is the name of the code?
It's
Number 1101.
11930 accessory building development standards.
Okay. Nice. Gonna have to read that.
So if they're in the front of anything in front of the house has to meet the setback requirements of the lot, but anything behind the house can meet these standards, which allow it to be closer to the property line. Some concerns I've heard from people about these ADUs being close to the property line is privacy, because when you have an accessory building, you don't expect to have a window right there and have someone looking onto your property. It's a wall that they get. And so my recommendation would be that anything that is outside of the normal setbacks of that lot would have to have a privacy wall. So whatever side of the building is next to another property, it would not be able to have any windows or openings, so that it would function like an accessory building to the adjoining property.
You still have the easements, right? I mean, from the properties, like
Some
property line, you
easements.
can't.
Utility easements.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, oftentimes those utility easements are, the property owner will contact the utility companies and receive documentation that they don't intend to utilize those. If they do provide that documentation to our building official, then he will, it's not vacating it, but he'll allow them to build an accessory building on that easement if we have documentation from the utility companies. That used to be that the utilities were run between lots above ground. Now, most of the utilities are provided through underground through the front of the lots. So we don't see a lot of those utility easements being utilized, sometimes.
So I expected, to have the ADU code be the same as the accessory dwelling, that if they can get permission to build on the easements, then they'd be allowed to build on the easements, but they would have to get the same permissions in order to do that. So yeah, you can stop me at any point and ask me your questions, what you think, your thoughts, or we can go over all of them and then we do it together, however.
Oh, I like how you're going. We
Yeah.
just go through it, and then if we have questions, we can just.
Can I go through and get an
That's
overview
cool.
of all
Yeah.
the different, and then kind of pick apart each one and
Yeah.
think what we feel comfortable with? Okay. So, of course, if you have an internal or an attached ADU, it has to meet the setback standards for the lot. It's just those detached ADUs that could use the setbacks for an accessory dwelling. And no windows or openings along the side of the detached ADU facing the shared property line. So they'd have to face all their windows and everything towards the main building.
And something to consider as well, I know our code doesn't prohibit it, but other city code, if one property owner has an accessory building 1 foot off the property line, then the neighboring property can't have it that close. So it's kind of a first come, first serve, so that you don't have a circumstance where there's 2 accessory buildings in the rear of 2 parcels and they're only 2 feet apart. So there may need to be some consideration if these are going to be dwelling units, that we have something in the code that they couldn't be side by side.
And maybe, the fire separation is 6 feet, so maybe we need to have a 3-foot setback just so that they always meet the fire separation and it doesn't cause an issue.
Either that, or it might be tricky to allow the first property owner to come in and have it 1 foot, and the neighbor is then
Has to be the
prohibited,
5,
or has
so
to
maybe
absorb
3
the
feet,
5.
and then it wouldn't matter about your roof line or anything. I love that. So that's a thought. And we don't necessarily have to refer to this code when we write the new ADU ordinance. I just thought this would be a good way to frame our ordinance, but we can specify exactly what we want. We can copy some ideas from that. We can delete things from that, but I like the 3 feet. Okay, any other questions about setbacks? Okay, so the lot size and maximum ADU size. This one is always a little tough. So when you think of ADUs, there's so many different properties this can be applying to. It could be a house on a 1/4 acre, or it could be a house on 5 acres. And we want different flexibility to make sure that they're usable for each one. I know where I live in Uinta Highlands, we have a lot of very strange shaped, kind of larger parcels. And so the residents have wanted to put larger ADUs in place, so that, because they have larger pieces of land. But you wouldn't want someone on a 1/4 acre to put a very large ADU in. So to that note,
When you say large, what are you considering large?
well, larger than the primary residence.
Okay.
And I think there might be a situation where on these large parcels, someone may want to build a large home on the property and then switch which one is the ADU and which one's the primary residence. Can you fathom how we do that?
So there are circumstances where I can see this. We haven't allowed the detached ADUs yet, and that's what our discussion is, but there are certainly existing internal accessory dwelling units where the primary occupant stays in the smaller apartment unit and rents out the larger portion of it, depending on what their preferences or what their circumstances are. I don't know that we would necessarily want to prohibit that from happening. I don't see an issue with them deciding what is more conducive for their living needs, as long as that owner occupancy requirement is continues
In one of the buildings. And
we do restrict it in our current code that the primary dwelling parcel or lot has to be at least 6,000 square feet.
correct.
So that's something to consider too. If we're going to allow detached on less than 6,000 square feet, we may need to update our internal to allow that as well.
And that's definitely something to think about. I looked at some of those small, like the 4,000 square foot lots that would have like a cottage home in the front and the garage in the back. You can fit that on 4,000 square feet. It's tight. But if they wanted to have an ADU in the garage, like a loft above the garage, that would be less than 600 square feet. would we want to allow that on parcels as small as 4,000 square feet, or would it be best to leave them to 6,000 square feet because we're already going to have quite a bit of traffic? Of cars.
Well, it would be limited in part. My guess is we would have
Yeah.
some parking issues with that, with the
Right.
primary residence.
Yeah.
Needing 2 spots
Yeah.
for the primary residence and at least 1, possibly 2, depending on.
Right.
But those are all considerations.
Right.
We can set the code to allow 1 parking stall for a 600 square foot, as long as the primary residence can maintain 2 parking spots for their residents. Can you map that out on 4,000 square feet, Sarah?
The only thing I'm worried about is I think they'll end up, and I've put in the parking provision that their parking spaces cannot block the access of the of the garage.
Accessory.
Or the accessory. We can't.
Vice versa.
And I'm afraid what might happen is they pave the backyard and have a parking space in the backyard that's really a patio, and they just park in front of the house. If that they aren't using it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
maybe
it is-
6,000 is.
So 6,000 might be a good limitation, just so that we aren't getting too tight there.
Yeah, it's already tight.
Nice.
Okay, so let's see, minimum lot size,
6,000
square
right.
feet.
That's good.
And then for the size requirement, if we get rid of anything under 6,000 square feet, this is like a little equation that kind of helps figure out how to limit the coverage of those ADUs on certain parcels. And so we're not saying, so we don't have giant ADUs on tiny parcels, and we aren't restricting large lots to having tiny ADUs. And in fact, that was an issue when I was working through ADUs with Western Weber County, is they wanted to only have tiny ADUs, and I'm like, well, a tiny ADU next to a giant mansion will look really ridiculous. There's certain lots that, you want to balance those two out. So the thought is on lots, so basically all lots shall not exceed 10% of the lot area or the gross floor area of the primary dwelling, whichever is less. So your ADU can't be bigger than your main building. But I guess the question is, would they be able to swap, if we had some sort of a way that they could swap the ADU and build a new main dwelling that designate the
If they had
existing
enough
building as an
acreage.
ADU?
If they had enough acreage, I think they could. I've seen that happen in other cities
Okay.
where they have an acre of property. They have a modest-sized home on
Yeah.
that 2,500 square foot home.
Yeah.
They decide to build a 5,000 square foot
Right.
main dwelling and rent out I think it would just need to be the same ratio, right? It would
Meet the same requirements.
Yeah, if they were to build a new primary dwelling, then the existing dwelling would need to be whatever the
Subordinate
percent.
and meet
Yeah,
one of them has to
the
meet
code.
the ADU code, and one of them has to meet the single family code.
And our accessory building doesn't allow it to cover more than 25% of the area in the rear of the main building to the rear property line.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to include
Something
something
about
like
that.
that as well, or
And I've seen where they restrict it. Well, on smaller lots it gets a little difficult, but especially on larger lots, if you restrict the whole property can only be covered by 25%, then it doesn't get, an issue of which home was the primary and which one's the secondary. If it's overall lot coverage can't be more than 25%. That's what I've seen. It's a little restrictive when you get to the smaller lots, the 6,000 square foot lots, and that's why this one. So I looked into that. I was thinking, okay, maybe we just do total coverage, and then the ADUs would be just restricted that way. But it ends up being a little more than 25% for the 6,000 square foot lots. For the depending on how much.
is 10% big enough?
So if you look
smaller
at it.
homes?
So a 6,000 square foot lot's quite small, and that means you could have a 600 square foot ADU. And for perspective, tiny homes are generally not more than 400 square feet.
Oh.
If you're looking detached, This would only apply to detached ADUs. If it's either internal or attached, I don't know that we really care so much. As long, if it's ingrained in the primary structure and looks like a primary structure, it's really the detached ADUs. I was really concerned about size and lot coverage.
Yeah, help me follow the gross floor area section, because I'm following the 10% of the 6,000, but can you kind of clarify what that gross floor area of the primary dwelling,
So if you-
whichever is less?
So if you have a 2,500 square foot home, and that may be on 2 levels, you could have a 2,500 square foot ADU, and it may cover 2,500 square feet. So at that point, you would revert to lot coverage, not covering more than 25% of the
It's
lot.
a or,
Yeah.
not 10% of the gross, because I'm thinking 10% of the gross floor area, you might get a bathroom space.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, the maximum, 10% of the lot area, or the gross floor area of the primary dwelling, whichever is less. So,
So you could have an equivalent square footage ADU as the main
yes.
building. So that's something to consider too. Do you want to allow,
Well,
2 homes.
that's
Yeah.
almost 2 homes on
Almost.
one lot.
it does have to look subordinate, and so we're trying to figure out how to make it look subordinate. So it would have to be a little bit smaller in size. We say that the gross floor area can reach that, but it would need to look subordinate, and I have that in the design
Yeah,
standards.
okay.
So
We'll get there.
yeah, we'll get there. And I don't. I'm going to put that 25% lot coverage because I'm not sure if I have that in another area. I put that on a different paper. Lot coverage. Okay. So, for perspective, if you had a 1/3 acre, which is about 15,000 square feet, you could only have a 1,500 square foot ADU, which is still quite large, but you wouldn't be able to go bigger than that, which is the size of like a 3-bedroom apartment, typical 3-bedroom apartment, I would say. Okay, height restrictions. This one, the height restriction for the accessory dwelling building is 25 feet. And primary residences are 35 feet, because you got this pulled up for us. Fruit or veggie stand?
35 for primary.
Yes, 35 for primary. So if the ADU is within the setbacks of the lot, I think it would be fine to go to 35 feet, but that's something to think about, as long as it's subordinate to the main dwelling. So do you want it,
So
I put that it can't exceed the height of the primary dwelling. And we might want to say it has to be 90% of the height of the main dwelling. Then it would look smaller. I've seen that too. But when it's...
Can you get 2 stories and what would
At
90%
25
of
feet,
the-
in 25 feet, you could get a type 2 story. But I think it would be best if we, and that was one thing I kind of want to discuss, is if we keep the single story, but attic access would be okay.
Yeah.
Just keep all of the ADUs. So if you have a big garage, you can't put a whole story above it and a roof. It has to be a nice big roof that your attic, your ADU is in the attic space, so that we aren't creating these giant pillars. I have an engineer I work with, he's out in Syracuse, and he said it's become a kind of an issue that everyone's building an ADU in their backyard that's super 2 stories right on the property line, and it just starts to get
see that
really
ugly.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't want that.
So if we have it restricted, we can keep it restricted 25 feet, but if we also say single story, but attic access is acceptable, then if they have, and maybe if like in general we don't want to have 2 stories at all,
Right.
that's a question. Then the attic would be the 2nd story if they had a main level that was an ADU, or if someone had an accessory garage, then they can use the attic as an ADU. The only reason I think a 2-story ADU might be appropriate is on some of these very large lots where you have quite a large house on the lot, and then it can still be 2-story, but a smaller 2-story, because the larger home would have a larger roof pitch and then go up taller. But if you have a smaller home, then it would be subordinate to the other home. So maybe like 1 acre lots and greater can have 2-story. That would be my thought process on it. So something to think about.
Or maybe even limited square footage of the ADU for a 2-story. For example, kind of like a townhome setting where you've got your kitchen and family room on one level and bedrooms upstairs, so the square footage of the actual ADU is limited if it is 2 stories. Does that make sense? So you don't have a sprawling 2-story ADU, but you could allow something? I don't know. Is that too complicated?
No, I see where you're coming from, but I think we'd actually want it, if it's gonna go taller, I think we actually want it to go wider, because I think it'll visually actually look better. And if it has to be smaller than the main dwelling, once you put the two together, I think they will look fine on a large lot.
Okay.
It's just when you're on small lots, we don't wanna see the tower dwelling next to the tower dwelling.
No, I totally agree. I think the circumstances I'm thinking of is if someone had enough room, they were still using the accessory building as a garage, but they were trying to build some type of a ADU with it.
Yeah.
But
Something to think
we
about.
can just we're brainstorming, right?
Yeah.
No, exactly.
So do you want to restrict the height? The only thing I worry about is there are some really low roof lines for some older home designs, and so some of them, if it had to be 90% of the primary dwelling, it could get
It'd be
really low. I like the term subordinate in the design standards, because then we could, as they bring them in, we could be like, well, it's bigger in all ways, so that's not subordinate, you know. But
would equal in those circumstances, though, Sarah, with some of those older homes, would it be a detriment for it to be equal to, as long as the size of it was subordinate?
yeah, that's why I think that'd be fine.
You'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I think I'd be
I'm
okay
thinking
with
the
that.
same thing. You know, if it has the same building height, but it still looks subordinate to the main dwelling for some of these older, because we are going to have lower pitched roof lines for these.
And then if it is in the attic, if it's next to the property line, it's still, the peak of that roof line can't be over 25 feet. So we restrict, if they're gonna bring it in, the proper setback for the lot, then it could go up to the height of the primary dwelling, or the 35 feet, if that's what the primary dwelling is. But next to I think it's just next to the property line, we need to protect that sky. So you would see probably a 9 or 10-foot wall in your backyard, which would be their building, but then the roof would go back, and that would be helpful.
Acceptable.
And that would limit how enclosed it feels. And then there wouldn't be any walls or any windows or openings on that back, so it'd be like somebody's shed is next to your building. So they would have to put a big gable on the front. Not gable. Yeah, that's what they're called. What are they called? Why am I forgetting it? Like where the window comes out. Like,
The gable.
the gable. There's a different word for it. It's late.
Parapet?
No, I don't usually know these words, but yeah, so that they wouldn't be able to have one on the back side of the house. They just have one big one on the, they'd have to work with just one side or 3 sides of windows for their ADU.
Bay window? Is that what you're
No, I can't think of it. Dormer, thank you.
Dormer.
Dormer. They'd have to have the dormer on the primary dwelling side. No dormers, windows, openings on the neighbor's side.
Nice.
So you're thinking that a lot of these may limit them to, well, it depends how big it is. If it's really big, you just have windows on one side, and that's fine. Put your hallway on the windowless side.
Your laundry room, something
laundry
that
room,
doesn't
hallway,
require windows.
Yeah. Parking. So internal ADUs are regulated by the state, and we cannot require more than 1 parking space for an internal ADU. That is concerning to me, because I live next to an internal ADU. And you know where they parked? On the street, because
Yeah.
their designated parking was in the way of the primary residents wanted to use the parking for their trailer. And so the ADU residents used the street, and so that was frustrating. So right now, the state has not said we can only do one for attached and detached. So that's why I have the one off-street parking for each internal ADU and 2 required for any attached or detached ADU. And I put greater than 600 feet there so that if they really wanted to have just a less than 600 square foot ADU, do you think it would be wise to still require 2 parking spaces? Or would it be okay to have 1? I mean, just where there's, like kind of a single person spot.
Even young marrieds or,
2 cars.
or you've got
Yeah.
roommates because you can't
Right,
even afford the rent.
Right.
600 square feet's pretty small.
It is.
I don't think it would matter, because I don't think they wouldn't get it if they had too many cars, you know what I mean? Like, so I think just requiring 1 would be fine. I don't see a need to require 2, because I don't think they would live there if they needed more parking than was available, you know what I mean?
Well, they just end up parking on the street.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. We disagree on that, but I don't have a problem with people parking on the street.
Oh, I don't mind if they're there sometimes. The problem is when all the neighbors start doing it. Just when I lived in California, it came to the point where you couldn't have friends over because all the primary residents were parked along the entire street. So there was no, delivery man comes at any point of day. You can't park on your own street. That's why I don't mind
I know
some.
it could get there, I just don't think it would, you know?
Okay.
Well, it's not only that,
We
it's
see that
like
big
during the
problem.
winter when we're.
In the winter, they can't
required
park
to
overnight.
drive the roads.
Yeah.
I mean,
It doesn't snow anymore, so
That's true. It's all taken care
it's
of.
in the past, and so.
But wouldn't it be on the owner? I mean, if you're gonna do an ADU for that purpose, saying, like you're saying, he's parking his trailer on the parking spot. You can't do that because.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nobody, unless somebody complains,
It becomes a bit of an enforcement.
Yeah. And it's,
Regulations.
and I didn't like that my neighbors did that, but I liked my neighbors, so I wasn't going to complain. It's kind of how it ends up.
And the same goes for public street parking. As long as it's legally parked, we can't enforce anything on that. So if they're legally parked on a public street for the state law requirements, then we can't do anything about
Yeah.
that, right? But this is, what do we want to require in order for them to be authorized to have that? So if you're comfortable with 1 parking spot for a small ADU, 600 square feet is
It's
probably
small.
small.
Yeah.
If you've got, a young family, maybe you only have 1 car. My next door neighbors have a 3-car garage, but they have 1 car. You really can't make judgments on what people are gonna do with their lifestyles.
Mhm.
And so, this is just what are our recommendations for the city council that we've taken parking into account? That we don't want to encourage people to park on the public street,
Right.
so we wanna require them to have
Right.
X amount.
Well, especially if we're gonna have a requirement in the city that you can't park on the streets during winter.
We do, our winter parking
Yeah, I was gonna say
ordinances would
So
also
we,
be.
we really need to make sure, unless we wanna change that law, that we have a place for people to park in the wintertime.
That's true. In the winter, they're going to have a place to put their car.
I think you have to require at least 1.
Yes.
Yes, at
Exactly.
least 1.
But it's up to, the discussion for if you want more than 1.
So just the exception for less than 600 square feet, that probably would be the biggest thing to consider.
Because if it's bigger than a 600 square foot ADU, your recommendation is they have 2 off-street parking.
Yes, because I think once you get any bigger, you get 2 bedrooms, 2 residents, 2 cars. The parking spaces should not block or interfere with required parking for the primary dwelling. So they can't count their driveway spaces as their ADU parking. And this is already in the ordinance, but if they convert a garage, then they need to provide parking that would replace the parking that was taken by the garage. We have materials that are required for parking already in the code, and so we can reference to that. Yeah, the parking requirements in the code. Any other thoughts on parking?
No, I mean, I like where that's going. To have at least one spot if it's 600 square feet or less. 2 spots if it's 600 square feet or bigger.
If
I
the
like that.
ADU is 600 square feet or bigger, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, because if we open it up, then we're kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know.
we
I
don't
just
have anything to back up.
I really don't like the 2 requirement, even if it's bigger. I just think in my house, I don't plan on making an ADU, but my property is set up that I could convert my basement into an apartment. Don't plan on it, but I could, and it would be bigger than 600 square feet. And there's no way we could do two parking spots. We could do 1. There's no way we could ever do 2. And I think street parking is not a big deal in the city, but housing affordability is, and that's the goal. And I think we would eliminate a lot of people, or discourage a lot of people from ever setting up an ADU if we required 2 parking spots. You know what I mean? So I think that's the bigger issue.
The internal ADU is we can only require 1 for an internal ADU.
Mm.
So that one would be limited.
Yeah.
Just
I get
saying.
you. Still think the point stands though that it would discourage a lot of people. That's putting 2 is a lot of space.
Mhm.
Anyway, 1 makes sense, I think, and I don't think most people would. Just don't see it being a big issue. That's my recommendation. Not
Okay.
doing 2.
Other thoughts? I mean, this is open for discussion.
Yeah, that is the discussion.
I mean, what we're building in our backyard, the main floor, the upper floor is gonna be our residence, part of our house, just a big great room. And the bottom is gonna be about an 850 square foot apartment, 2 bedrooms, bath, and then a bigger family room, kitchen area. And we have room for 2 or 3 cars on the south side of our house, but we don't want to have any more than that. I mean, it's just, we don't want to have
It's a lot.
a family, and we're hoping to just get like young couple or roommates or things like that, because we want it big.
It does, and that parking that you're talking about wouldn't interfere with your garage parking and your
No.
access for the primary residence.
Right. Yeah, it's just off to the side. We've got 11 feet from the edge of our garage to the property line.
And how big is your lot, Chad?
It's a square, 10,000
Yeah.
square.
So it's a 1/4 acre.
Mhm.
So that's a good visual.
Yeah.
And we don't have to decide tonight.
No,
Yeah.
but they're all just really good things, because we wanted to make sure that we were well within, so we kept the same house setbacks on the other side. So our house runs north and south like this, our addition runs east and west. But we didn't go any further closer to the fence on this side over here. We kept the same distance from that. And I think we have to be careful, as we're doing this, because you don't want our city to start looking like a favela in Brazil, where you got houses everywhere, all these different kinds of sizes and shapes, and people coming out of the woodwork. I think there has to be some sort of consistency and order, because we want our city to be beautiful. And if I have a neighbor that has a really weird shaped lot, but they put this ADL in the back and it just blocks my view to the mountains, I think we just have to be careful. I mean, we want people to be able to do that if they want to do that, and it's great for housing options for people that want a smaller option, but I think we need to be careful that we don't lessen the standards so much that what people put in their backyard looks janky and it looks ugly, and it makes our community look ugly. I mean, I still want it to be beautiful. I want people to want to live here.
And then we don't have any restriction in architecture, right? Either.
That's our last
Design standards.
design standards. I can go over those, not our last, but. So some sort of verbiage that states that the ADU should seem subordinate in scale and massing and shall comply with the architectural style of the primary dwelling, or no, not comply, complement the architectural style of the primary dwelling. So it doesn't necessarily say they have to be matching, but when you see the two together, or however they are visual from the street, you're not shocked, is the goal. I know a lot of people have like pre-built ADUs, and I think those would be advantageous for people to be able to put in their backyard. I don't know if they
Like
would work.
pre-manufactured ADUs?
Yeah. But they can be quite small, but there's a big movement for people wanting to do those, but they,
Like the tiny homes?
yeah, like tiny homes, things like that.
I think we have to be a little careful with that to make sure
Mobile home.
that,
Yes, right.
and also that the utilities are permanent connections,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So maybe they could look like a tiny house, but
Right.
the advantage to stick built is you know that you've got your public utility connections.
So we want to make sure they had permanent connections just for the affordability of the ADU, having an option where they could be manufactured. So if someone came in with a tiny home that looks like a cute shed, it may not look exactly like the house, but it complements the house. It just looks like an adorable shed in the backyard. That's the kind of thing we're looking for, is that it wasn't a tin shed they put in the back, but something that is livable and doesn't detract from the rest of the neighborhood.
Right.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, somebody puts up the cheapest thing they can build. not
Yeah,
the cheapest.
plywood,
Yeah.
plywood building, moldy and rotten.
And we have to be careful with architectural standards as well. The state doesn't love us to limit or to specify exactly what somebody can do with architectural standards, but guidelines are fine. And also, just we have to be mindful of the age of the home, right? Because if somebody is building, for example, my mother-in-law's home that we sold here in Harrisville was over 100 years old. It was cute from the outside. You would never have guessed it was over 100 years old. But to try to match that
Right.
style would be a little tricky nowadays. But you could do some complementary architecture, I think, to make something look
I
really
like
cute.
that. Could we use that verbiage, complementary?
That's
Yeah,
what I have
I
there.
think you could.
So complement the architectural style of the primary dwelling. So I feel like it gives direction without being like,
Just
this has to be this.
You might not find materials anywhere. Even in phases of development, we've seen product no longer available when there was, particularly in 2008, when the market just stalled completely.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't
And then there was a
anything.
gap, and then they went to reconstruct or to start back up, and they couldn't find any of the same. And in some places, it caused an issue because the new materials they used to build the new townhomes were nicer and newer and looked better, and the other residents felt like it was devaluing their homes, even though it had nothing to do with the builder's ability to continue to build. So just being able, I like the words complement or similarly.
And I'm even, if it's small and you don't see it from the street, something different, it's just, especially when the tiny homes come in, it could be a little more modern than the house. It is gonna be hard. What if they don't like the architecture of their house, Like you must build that 70s mid-century. Well, mid-century would be pretty, but that 70s, whatever that is, split entry.
Yeah,
It needs
so
to look like a
some of
70s split entry.
Right. So some of
Everyone's
these older
favorite home
homes could
style.
be grandfathered in on several different things, but we want to make sure that the newer ones, if it's to be built, is up to current code.
Yes, and I did put it in here, but there will be verbiage that says it has to meet all of the single-family code requirements, only one kitchen. I think that was one of the things. We don't want to have two kitchens in an ADU. And so access is something. A lot of codes state that the primary entrance for the ADU has to be on the side or rear of the building as viewed from the front lot lines. But I think there might be some exceptions for a front-facing entrance we might want to consider. Like if your entrance, like if this is ground level and for some reason you have like an entrance that goes here in the front of the house, that makes sense. You wouldn't see the actual door down here. So if it isn't visible from the street, if it's detached and clearly subordinate, so maybe your lot is wide along the street like this and you have your house and then the ADU next to it, you want the entrance at the front, not to the side. So that's kind of one. Or in the situation where you have a huge front yard and you put it in the front and that main dwelling's in the back and it just looks like a single family home. It might be counterproductive to put the entrance on a different side because when you're driving down the street, you want to have it look like a single family home with the other home behind. So that one kind of works my brain around and around.
Well, and you see a lot in St. George, you see the little casitas out
Yes.
front. That's something to consider whether you allow that or you don't allow that.
Yes.
Some of those are
They're casitas.
little casitas. They're not necessarily an ADU because I don't believe all of them have kitchens. They're more of a bedroom for like a mother-in-law situation. But
Most of them do have they're like studio.
yeah, they might be like a
Like a
studio and they have a
Basic
kitchenette
kitchenette, yeah.
in it. And not maybe a full kitchen, but some of them I think it just depends on how they build them. But
Okay.
I don't believe our intention is to have that be included in this ordinance. So
Or excluded.
okay. It's up to you on whether you want to make that consideration or what that looks like, what kind of guidelines you want to put around having
Because
something
they do,
like that.
yeah, because and sometimes in the front, sometimes in the back. I think they really are just ADUs when it comes down to it. And if
A
they're
lot
in
of them
front-
that I've seen are just bedrooms that just gives
Oh,
another
another
option
option
for
for
privacy if you had someone living there. But I don't doubt that many of them have probably at this point been converted into ADUs.
Okay.
I guess that would be like defining the kitchen, like you're saying kitchenette.
Yeah.
Well, that's not kitchen, well.
What defines a kitchen, right? The
Yeah.
building code defines it has to have a stove and oven, has to have an oven unit. So, like a hot plate, if somebody had that wouldn't be defined as a full kitchen. You have to have certain things for it to be
And-
defined as a kitchen.
Yeah, and the ADU requires it to have a kitchen.
A kitchen.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it does have to meet those requirements.
That's good. So if they want to build something that has a kitchenette, then it would not, that's what I'm getting at, it would not be an ADU then?
If it doesn't have the full kitchen, no, it would
Yeah,
not.
if
It
they
wouldn't
had a
be
hot
required.
plate or something like that, it would be. And certainly, could you live in a circumstance like that? Yeah, you could. But
That
it
could
wouldn't-
be your
yeah.
accessory,
It could be
non-conforming accessory building.
It wouldn't classify as an ADU because it does have to have a kitchen by definition.
So if somebody did want to build that, would that be allowed or not?
I don't think it fits anywhere in the code
It
because it wouldn't be an
wouldn't fit.
accessory building, because you can't
You
put.
can't live in an accessory
Accessory
building,
building.
and you have to have a kitchen to be an ADU. So there's a little bit of restriction there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, yeah, just the entrance, and if we're okay with front facing, because if we are allowing detached in the front yard, then that's something to consider. And also if it's in the side yard that's next to the house, with those, if you have a lot that just
Really wide.
really
Yeah.
wide, because that actually could be cute, one big house and then the smaller one next to it, whatever. I don't know.
As long as it meets the setbacks, right?
Yeah, it would have to
If
meet
it-
the same setbacks, yeah. And if it's not behind the house, then it would have to meet those setbacks. And fire obviously would govern in all these situations, so they would have to meet fire requirements. And that's why that 3 foot off the
property line.
Property line is
Would
a
be
great
good
idea.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like that idea.
So other random considerations. Do we allow separate utility meters?
So that's up to the utility providers.
Okay.
Our internal dwelling does not, we do not want them to have separate utility connections for the internal. The water meters and
Sewer?
sewer would be us. I think it's tricky. It's a lot of forward thought here for the future. And I say that because one of the cities, Bountiful or Farmington. Is it Farmington?
Farmington.
So they allowed ADUs. They've allowed ADUs for a number of years, and because of the housing market, they've actually sold those ADUs and allowed them
They've
to
allowed them to
subdivide
subdivide.
off
Oh, wow.
those ADUs. So if you don't allow a separate utility connection, and then you're subdividing off that property for ownership, then you have a pretty good problem to have to sort through. So the main question we need to check and see is what are the utility providers' preferences for culinary water, because we don't provide that. I think it would warrant some more sewer connection, and I think we were discussing briefly at the beginning whether impact fees would be paid for ADUs. I think you can charge them on a new building permit if new services are being provided.
Okay.
But if you don't have a new sewer line or a new water connection, then you can't charge them
So
that
we might
impact fee.
want to, so that we can get the impact fees, because they are going to impact from someone who runs those. Yeah, I am a little nervous about all of these coming in because we're going to have to upsize lines, upsize store,
And infrastructure.
Infrastructure does get impacted by these. In Farmington, they had a particular situation where Farmington had mostly populated by large families, and they noticed that their infrastructure actually was overbuilt after a period of time, because the homes that had 10 people had 2. And that's why they weren't concerned about the ADUs. So a lot of other municipalities are really concerned about ADUs because, I think Harrisville doesn't have a lot of capacity. So it's a little scary for municipalities that don't have a lot of capacities. But Farmington had excess capacity just because of the demographics of their community. So they allowed the ADUs, and they had large parcels, and so splitting them off, all those things worked for them. But that's a very particular situation. Overloading, because when we run our impact fee analysis and our future, our capital facilities plans, we don't take ADUs into consideration at all. So they really can overrun the system if we're not careful.
Yeah, and that's just the reality of trying to bring more housing into spaces that we hadn't anticipated. It's the same for our mixed use. We're working through this with our mixed use, where our initial general plan, a lot of the pink areas on our future general plan were going to be commercial. Now that would be 1 or 2, maybe 10 bathroom connections, but now we have 100 townhomes going in there, and it's just the infrastructure demands are significant when you make housing changes like this. So we just need to be mindful of what that looks like too. So,
and the
utility connections, like a sewer connection, is beneficial if we do charge that impact fee, because that money goes directly towards us being able to upsize the sewer pipe, if that makes sense. So definitely something we need to do a little more.
So I think for internal ADUs, I think that would be complicated to have. Anything internal or attached, I think would be complicated to require or to allow a new meter. But something I think definitely to consider for the detached units, then they can operate more independly.
Yeah, we'll see what the
Utility
providers
companies
say.
Yeah.
It'll be the same for Rocky Mountain Power and Dominion Energy too. We'll have to check with them.
So just a note about impact fees. I know we don't want to increase the cost of housing, but if we don't charge the impact fees, the current residents will pay for it in their taxes. It comes out of the budget. But I know that's something I think a lot of people, they're like, oh no, let's just get rid of it. Let's just get rid of all these fees so that our houses are more affordable. Really, that means that current residents are subsidizing the development. And I say it because I know I'm one of those people that runs those studies and can see that it can be very significant to the existing community, and so we don't want to end up in that situation where the existing community is subsidizing a bunch of people coming in that they didn't want to come in. At least they should pay their own way if they're coming in.
I would agree. Yes, you give them the impact fee.
Something else, addressing, like allowing them to have, like the primary address has their address, and then maybe like some sort of
A, B,
or B,
front, rear, something.
figure out some sort of standard.
Garage, house,
Yeah.
some.
And would they be able to receive mail? They probably, can they have 2 mailboxes? They probably can only have.
That's up to the postal service.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the newer neighborhoods the post office is now requiring us to do the
The
yes,
boxes.
they have
Oh,
they have a specific name. I can't think of what they're called, but those are. But historically, Harrisville doesn't have those
Right.
through our neighborhoods, so that's something to be considered for the postal services, and we can reach out and find out what their preference is.
Yeah. And just how any sort of signage to make sure emergency responders go to the right place.
Location.
Yeah, right entrance. So, and that might be something we want to put in the ordinance, just stating where and how the signage is listed on the curb, on house, however we want to do that. So those are thoughts. So back to the question, do we want to allow more than 1 ADU per lot? The concerns?
I say no.
Say no?
No.
Okay.
I mean, okay.
That's all right. The concerns where we're limited on how we can, infrastructure would be my main concern.
Yes.
Infrastructure definitely would be, so.
What if, like, there was a fairly big lot and they had like 1 internal and 1 external? Would we still only, permit up to 2, okay, sorry. So
That's
no,
what I
3 or
recommend.
more, okay. So not 3 or more, okay.
Now, we could say 1 ADU. The only reason I would consider 2 is some of these big lots that really don't have development potential. And so we're not, right, like something that, I mean, infrastructure-wise, if it's one of these ag parcels, could apply for a Haas overlay or something like that. But if their particular lot is not laid out to be sold or whatever, and they want to do more than 1 ADU, we'd probably be less impacted by 2 ADUs on a 1 acre parcel than if they Haased it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So if we want to allow more on larger parcels, that would be something to consider. But again, it could be complicated because it's
Yeah,
not.
do you see the uproar?
It could be
Yeah.
complicated.
Neighbors
Yeah.
saying, I want to see this open space, and you want to build how many ADUs in your backyard?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
just-
definitely would want to put a limit on it, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we could say just 1, and maybe they just build 1 large ADU if that's what they get.
Right.
At this
limiting
point,
the
1
size.
is better than none, which our
That's
code
true.
currently
Right.
is none.
Right.
So
Yeah.
1 is expanding.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 'cause I mean, that's almost like putting in a rental unit.
It is. It's
Yeah.
exactly like
Then-
putting in a rental unit.
Yeah, and I think we want to avoid that.
So just 1, limit 1.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, Ogden has so many open spaces right now for apartments,
And
and they keep building them, and it's like, golly.
we
Would a-
caught up on apartments.
Would
Yeah.
a duplex be considered one? You know, like they're combined and,
If it has 2 separate families, then it'd be 2.
and now
And
you're saying instead of building 2, they could build
Yeah,
one.
and our
right?
current, the way we process our current internal dwelling units, because it's tricky, right? And people don't always don't tell us that they're building an internal dwelling unit. they just do it, and a lot of people don't take out building permits to finish off their basements and things. It's really tricky for the city to even identify and know that these are happening. So
Yes, right.
we kind of use the litmus test for us is really if they are using it as an income to them, because they might have family members living with them and they're not charging them rent, but it's two separate. They have a kitchen, they have, it is an internal dwelling unit. That's really tricky for us because the state wants to know about all of them for housing calculations, but from our standpoint, they're not receiving an income from that. It's not they have maybe their children living with them or somebody else living with them. Most situations where we do know an internal dwelling unit is happening is when they want a business license. They come into us, they're gonna rent it, they want a business license, and then we know that they have one. But we know it's happening in the city in spots that we don't even know. It's just really hard for us to regulate that. The external ones will be more noticeable, right?
Right.
The neighbors are gonna notice if somebody's coming in and out of a garage space that didn't used to have people occupying it, or if somebody built something, they're gonna notice that. So the external ones will be, and it's not so much a policing of the city as it is the state really wants us to be able to give them reports back on housing and how we're addressing the moderate income housing things. And it's just a little tricky for us. Nobody comes in really and signs on their building permit, yeah, I'm building an internal accessory unit. That almost never happens. I think we have a question on it, on our building permit, but it's really hard for us to know whether they're just putting a kitchen in their basement so that their kids can make their own snacks. We don't know if that's happening,
And
right?
most of these are used for family.
A lot are in today's world, right?
The older and younger.
Yeah.
Or parents, aging parents. They're moving in with their kids because they need help or,
Yeah.
So,
but it opens up a lot of doors. I think we have to be super mindful of what we're offering
Right.
for
Yeah.
housing options, and this is a good, it's going to be
But do it reasonably and not
Do it reasonably
open Pandora's box.
and controlled, right?
Right, and
Because
controlled, yes, exactly.
that's why we're a little ahead of the game. This is somewhat like the Haas ordinance last year that we worked on. We're anticipating that legislation will come out in this session mandating external dwelling units. It's been talked about the 2 years prior, so we just anticipate that it's going to be, there's not been a lot of conversation about it in our meetings because property taxes are everywhere and all the legislation related to that. So we haven't had any good, but I am anticipating one of the bills that's adopted is going to include an accessory dwelling unit. And I haven't followed that, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. Which is fine.
I think that's just good for our city anyway. I mean, even
It's time.
however long it takes them, it's good for our community as
Have
long
the
as
option.
we're
Yeah.
reasonable.
And I think they conducted a study and darn near 80% of cities allow them already. So it's not going to be an impact to that many Utah cities. It's those of us that haven't yet.
Right. Okay, so what's the process then? If somebody wants to put an ADU in, what do they do?
I will include in the ordinance
A list of steps.
Yeah,
Application.
an application process. It'll be similar to a building permit, but just not quite as involved in a couple of areas, but pretty similar.
Okay. Yeah, because we want to rent out our basement, and so I'm going to come get a
Yeah.
license to do that,
Yep.
so that we can do that.
Yeah.
But it would be great to, because some of these people, I mean, if it's easy enough, I think we need to get some of these people out of the woodwork that are doing it, but nobody knows that they're doing it.
Yeah.
And maybe we send out something in the city newsletter.
Yeah, we've talked about outreach on that
Yes.
front. And
Yeah.
we've talked about whether there's an incentive we do have an adopted good landlord program already in the city. We've been understaffed for so long, we don't really have anybody that oversees that program. But we do have it in place, and as far as an adoption of it, and something that we've talked about, and this is, Sarah and I are gonna jump into this with the strategies for moderate income housing updates that we need to do. One of the things that we can do is provide a training for landlords, and then they can get a discounted rate on their business license. So I think if we can create that and have an opportunity where landlords either do an online course or they come in and have an in-person course on, and then we can reduce their business license, that will incent them to come in and say, yeah, I am renting out my basement, or I do have an ADU, and it's not gonna cost them
Yes.
the regular rate.
Yes.
We're trying to
Good.
trying to
Thank
do a
you.
few things there.
Nice. That's wonderful.
Making it
Because I want to be a good landlord.
Yeah. So.
So that's all I have for the discussion. From your input, I'll put together an ordinance that we can go over, the actual ordinance language. But I wanted to go through it in this format first so I could get your input and
That's
ideas.
awesome. Do you want to have like a work session?
Yeah, well, however you want to proceed, we can
What do
do
you-
it during.
What's your opinion on this? Should we do a work session and just really go over this with a fine-tooth comb and just come prepared to discuss? Because I think so many things
I
have been
think
presented.
that's what we
to
did
me.
with the Haas ordinance. You wrote it out and then we hashed out
Hashed
every
it out.
little detail.
And this
Something
is
similar would be great.
this is a land use amendment, so it does require a public hearing. So you can take that into consideration of what that timing looks like. If you want, I mean, Sarah can put that ordinance, we can have a work session, then we can do a public hearing and then do some more work session work after that. At what point do we want to take that public input, because it will be required?
Yeah, I like that. I'd like to get some.
It's
Yeah, I'd
like
like
we
the
don't
idea
want
of
to
a-
take it too soon and not too late.
Yep.
Right.
But yeah, as long
That
yeah, I like the
perfect
idea.
moment.
Whether we do 2 work sessions or 1, but usually after. As long as we do a work session after public input, just
Wrap
in
it
case
up.
somebody brings up something that we
Kinda
didn't think
thought
of,
of.
you know.
Sounds good. So I'll draft an ordinance. So next month we can do a work session with the actual ordinance. We can take public hearing at that time, or we can take it the next month, whatever you think.
Yeah, I like
You
that.
think reviewing this language, and we'll put all, Sarah will put all of this that we've talked
That
about
we've
tonight into an ordinance.
Mhm.
Or
If
you
you're
wanna-
comfortable with that, we can have the public hearing, take public input
Oh,
on
yeah.
that.
Yes.
Or we can have her draft the ordinance, talk about the ordinance first.
And then I can
have the
revise
public
it and
hearing
then do
at the
public
Yeah,
end.
see, I like that.
Revise it and then
To
do
do
the
the
second
draft.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do the
Yeah.
draft and
Yeah.
then the public
And then
hearing.
we've got
Yeah.
something to take to the public.
that you've had
we've
a couple
really
of
thought
rounds
through
of.
and-
And then we can do a work session after that, after we receive the public.
Yes.
Okay,
So
I like
2
that.
more, yeah.
Okay.
That's good. And then the public feels like they're a part of it. They've got some skin in the game.
And we will know by March, the legislative session will
Right.
be wrapped up by then. So if they do have any because we were mindful, we didn't want to start too early and then
Right.
adopt something and have standards that we
Yeah.
don't have.
Say
included.
update this by 2027.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
that sounds
So
great.
That's good.
Okay.
That's really
And maybe
good.
we can do part of that work session next month, our strategies for our moderate income housing. We can, in the meantime, we can talk about what our recommendation will be, and then we can present that to you for your discussion too.
That would be marvelous.
Is that too quickly for March?
I'll just have to get with you because I don't know.
The
This is
strategy.
the one I don't know
Yeah.
much about. I have to get up to speed on what's going on there.
Well, fortunately, our HOTS will meet that for this year.
Okay. Doesn't look like we have anybody for public comment, unless you want to leave here and go stand out there and make a public comment. Okay, so let's move on then to agenda item number 7. And we'll turn the floor over to Jenny for staff follow-up.
So the only thing I have for follow-up is the annual training. So we did get credit for January. We did our open and public meetings training and our non-discrimination training. But we do need to be providing the hours of training that you all are putting in. So whether that's through the online courses that's through the Land Use Institute, reading the land use book counts. So if you just send me or Sarah an email saying, these are my, kind of like you did in elementary school and you put your reading minutes for every day.
Yeah.
If you just let us know, we have to have 4 hours of training and annually for each planning commissioner.
Sure.
So if you want to attend any formal trainings, please.
Are you aware of any
you'll-
that are coming up? And does the city
The Utah League of
sponsor
Cities,
them?
their spring conference is in St. George. It's in April. They had their fall conferences in Salt Lake, so that one's a lot easier for people to attend. You don't have to necessarily leave for quite as long. Those are both the League of Cities and Towns, but the Land Use Institute actually does training.
The land use does, but also is it AAICP? What is it? The
Association.
planning association does one spring and fall as well.
For the planning commissioners?
It has elements that for planning commissioners as well. So I could look and see the notes, but I think
That
they
would,
are.
that would be great if you were aware.
Fall
of
is
any.
usually more local than spring.
Yeah, that's.
You know what would
yeah.
be very helpful, where you were kind of in the know to just kind of draft a list or things of
Yeah,
of
resources for
options.
that?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you,
Okay.
that we could participate in. And I know the land use is great.
That was a good.
So a lot of those are convenient because they're online.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think some of them even print off a certificate for you after you've completed the course. So we can put that together and send an email out to you.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Yes.
I think that's all I've got because we talked
Yeah.
about the other upcoming things in our discussion tonight.
That's great. I was talking to the captain of Northview. He goes to Snap Fitness, so we chat a lot. So I was just telling him a little bit about what we talked about last night, and, for their fire station over here, and they're actually really psyched
Yeah.
to be over here.
Yeah, you'll see our building, our police department and city hall. They've poured footings for that.
Nice, I didn't know that.
That's moving along.
Excellent.
Cool. I
That's-
don't know when Northview's will start, but I believe shortly.
That's awesome.
Where's theirs gonna be?
So our complex, our public works building sits on 750. Our city hall's next to that, and to the east will be Northview. It'll be a little easier to
All
see
together.
when our road is put in. We've got a lot of the utilities put in our new city road, but we're not. We're held up by UDOT in our environmental study, which I shouldn't say that on the record, but it is. We're held up on our environmental study because we got federal appropriation funding. It goes, UDOT helps facilitate that, and we have to meet their guidelines. So we've run into a little bit of a snafu that's delayed our schedule. So we may not get pavement this year, but by 2027, we should have our new road in. Okay,
Oh, that's good.
so that's a little update on city news.
I like it.
It's
I
wonderful.
like it a lot.
Do any of you have any questions about what's happening in the city? As long as we've got the expert here.
No, I don't have any questions.
Good.
Well,
Let's
welcome
back-
aboard.
Yes, welcome.
Ruben.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
Well-
thank you.
Yes, it'll be nice to have you. We'll have a larger group now. Which would be great.
Okay.
Not that our small ones are good too. Small but mighty.
You guys are funny.
That's right. All right, well, that's good. Well, thank you for the updates, and unless there's any concerns or questions that you'd like to talk about, I propose that we just go ahead and adjourn for the evening.
I second that.
Okay, I don't think we have to do any roll call for that. I'm just gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.